My name is Harry. I'm 20 years old, and until last week, my life was quiet. I'm a data analyst. I like spreadsheets. They're predictable, clean. The numbers always add up. I think that's why I started collecting old photos. A hobby to balance the cold logic of my job with a little warmth from the past. I'd hunt through flea markets and dusty second-hand shops, looking for old albums. Each photo was a frozen moment, a story I could just observe, never be a part of. I liked it that way. I found the album in a box under a table in a shop that smelled of mildew and old wood. The owner, an old man who seemed to be made of the same dust that covered his wares, just waved a hand when I asked the price. I gave him $10. It felt like a steal. The album itself was unremarkable. Black leather, cracked and peeling. But the photos inside, they were from the turn of the last century. A family. A stern-looking man, a woman with kind, tired eyes, and two little girls in identical white dresses. They stood in front of their farmhouse, stiff and formal, as people did back then. I was flipping through the pages on my couch, a cup of tea going cold beside me, when I saw him for the first time. It was a photo of the two girls playing in a field. And there, in the background, just at the tree lean, was a man. He was tall, impossibly so, and thin. He wore a dark, ragged suit that seemed to blend into the shadows of the trees. But his face was pale and elongated, like something stretched too tight over bone. And he was staring, not at the girls, but straight out of the photograph. Straight at me. A chill went down my spine. It was just a trick of the light, a flaw in the developing process. I'm a logical man. I reasoned it away. I turned the page. But he was in the next photo too. A family portrait on the porch. This time, he was further to the left, half hidden behind an old oak tree. Only one side of his terrible face was visible, one dark eye socket fixed on. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. This wasn't right. This wasn't possible. I began frantically turning pages, my breath catching in my throat. He was in every single picture from that point on. Always in the background. Always partially obscured. Behind a window pane, a shadow in the barn door, a distorted reflection in a rain barrel. And in each successive photo, he was closer. His form became slightly less blurred, his dreadful features a little sharper. The family, meanwhile, was changing. Their postures grew more rigid. Their smiles, once faint but present, had vanished, replaced by wide, fearful eyes. In the last photo, the family was huddled together on the porch steps. The mother was clutching the girls, her face a mask of pure terror. They weren't looking at the camera. They were looking to their right, just off frame, at something the photographer couldn't, or didn't, see. And there he was. The tall man. He was no longer in the background. He stood at the very edge of the photograph, one long, thin leg stepping into the frame. His arm, elongated and ending in fingers too long to be human, was reaching out towards the family. His face was now clear. It was a nightmare of sharp angles and shadows, with a mouth that was little more than a dark, hungry slit. And his eyes, they were solid black pits, and they were staring directly into mine. I slammed the album shut, my hands trembling. I threw it across the room. This was insane. I poured a whiskey, my hand shaking so badly the bottle clinked against the glass. It was just a story, I told myself. A creepy, curated collection of photos some sicko put together. A practical joke. I decided to burn it in the morning. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those black pits staring back at me. The next day, Sunday, I tried to forget. I went for a walk, I tried to watch a game, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept the album locked in a cupboard. Out of sight, out of mind. Right. Wrong. That evening, I was scrolling through my phone, looking at the pictures I'd taken on my walk. The park, some ducks, a nice shot of the sunset. And then I saw it. In the photo of the sunset, just behind the line of trees, a tall, thin shadow. My blood ran cold. I swiped back frantically. There, in the picture of the ducks. In the reflection on the water. A tall, dark smudge that hadn't been there before. It's him. He's not in the album anymore. He's in my world. In my photos. I started taking pictures of everything. My empty living room. My closed cupboard door. My own face in the bathroom mirror. At first, there was nothing. Then, a blur in the corner. A shadow behind the couch that wasn't there a second ago. A distorted shape in the mirror just behind my reflection, getting clearer, sharper, closer with every shot. My technology is failing. My phone camera glitches whenever I tried to capture him clearly now, the screen filling with static and a sound like whispering. The lights in my apartment flicker when I'm alone. I hear footsteps in the hallway outside my door that stop the second I hold my breath. I'm recording this now on my laptop. I'm not doing it for views. I'm doing it because it's the only camera I have left that he hasn't fully corrupted. Yet. I'm a logical man. I believe in data. And the data tells me a terrifying story. He started in their world, trapped in their album. Someone, maybe me, looked too long, paid too much attention, and I let him out. I gave him a way in. He feeds on attention. He manifests through the lens. And he's getting stronger. I can see the reflection in my dark computer screen. He's not in the background anymore. He's standing right behind my chair. I can see the faint outline of his elongated shape, the unbearable stillness of him. I don't know what happens when he finally steps into the frame. I don't know what he wants. But I know I'm not going to be in this picture much longer. If you have old albums, if you see something in the background that shouldn't be there, don't look too close. Whatever you do, don't blink. My name is Robert. I'm 35 years old. I fix things for a living. Leaky faucets, faulty wiring, broken drywall. I believe in problems I can see, touch, and solve with my hands. My wife, Clara, used to say that was my greatest strength and my biggest flaw. She said some things aren't meant to be fixed. I didn't listen. Now, I'd give anything to hear her say it again. We bought the old Victorian house on Elm Street because it was a project. It had good bones, as Clara said. I saw rotten floorboards and outdated plumbing. A problem to be solved. The estate sale was a rushed affair. The previous owner, an elderly man, had passed away quietly in his sleep. The place came furnished, filled with a lifetime of someone else's memories. We kept a lot of it. Clara loved the history. The first thing we noticed was the silence. Not a peaceful silence, but a thick, heavy quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. The sound of the refrigerator humming or a floorboard creaking under your own foot felt like a violation. We laughed it off. Old houses are just like that, I said, patting a wall as if to reassure it. Then the sound started. Or, more accurately, the lack of them. It was Clara who pointed it out first. "Rob," she said one evening, her voice a little too bright. "Does it get quiet to you sometimes? All of a sudden?" I'd been focused on sanding a doorframe and hadn't noticed. I told her she was working too hard, decorating, making the place a home. But I started to notice it too. You'd be walking from the kitchen to the living room, and halfway there, the world would just stop. The gentle hum of the computer would cut out. The distant sound of a car from the street would vanish. Even the sound of your own footsteps would be swallowed up by this absolute, profound silence. It was a void. It felt like being underwater at great depth, the pressure pushing in on your eardrums. It never lasted long. Maybe 5-10 seconds. Then sound would rush back in with a painful pop, like the climax of a song you hadn't realized was building. We stopped talking about it. We just exchanged a look, a quick, frightened glance, when it happened. The silence had a presence. It felt like a thing that entered the room and stood there, watching, listening, before it left. 3 weeks ago, Clara was putting up curtains in the master bedroom. I was in the basement, sorting through boxes. The silence descended. This time, it was different. It was heavier, more focused. And in the absolute dead air, I felt a pull, a compulsion. I dropped the box I was holding and ran upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. The silence was a physical barrier in the hallway, but I'd pushed through it. I found her in the bedroom. She was standing perfectly still on the stepladder, one hand still on the curtain rod. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with a vacant, terrible emptiness. She was staring at the far corner of the room, where the shadows were deepest. "Clara?" My voice didn't even make a sound. It was devoured by the quiet. She didn't look at me. She slowly raised a finger and pressed it to her lips. The silence broke. She blinked, shook her head, and looked at me like I was crazy for staring. She said she just got a little dizzy. She didn't remember a thing. That was the last day she spoke. The doctors call it conversion disorder. A sudden, severe psychological trauma manifesting as a physical symptom. They ran every test. Scans, blood work. Nothing. Her vocal cords are perfectly fine. She just doesn't make a sound anymore. Not a whisper, not a cry. She communicates by writing on a small notepad she carries everywhere. Her handwriting gets more frantic every day. The house is never silent now. The silence has moved. It's inside her. And it's growing. I see it in her eyes. That same vacant, listening look. She spends hours just staring at the same corner of the room, her head cocked as if hearing a melody the rest of us can't perceive. The pressure in the house is constant now, a dense, auditory fog. I feel like I'm shouting from the bottom of a well. Last night, I woke up to find her side of the bed empty. I found her in the living room, standing in the dark. She was facing the wall, perfectly still. I called her name. Nothing. I walked up to her and put a hand on her shoulder. She didn't react. I gently turned her around. Her eyes were closed. But from her slightly parted lips, a darkness was seeping out. It wasn't smoke or shadow. It was a pure, solid blackness, a substance that seemed to absorb the faint light from the street lamp outside. It was the silence. It was pouring out of her, and I heard it. For the first time, in the absence of all other sound, I heard the silence. It wasn't a lack of noise. It was a low, resonant frequency, a vibration that felt like it was scraping the inside of my skull. It was the sound of absolute, utter emptiness. It was the sound of being forgotten. I stumbled back, and her eyes snapped open. They were solid black. The stream of darkness receded back into her mouth, and she looked at me with a confused expression, reaching for her notepad. "What's wrong?" she wrote. "I couldn't sleep. I fixed things. It's what I do. But how do you fix a silence that has become an entity? How do you repair a hole in the world that is slowly consuming the woman you love?" I'm recording this on my phone. The audio is terrible. It's filled with a low, distorting hum the microphone can't process. I don't know if anyone can even hear me over it. She's sleeping now. The room is so quiet. The bad kind of quiet. The kind that feels like it's gathering its strength. I think it's almost finished feeding. I think it needed a voice to make itself real. And soon, it won't need her anymore. I'm a man who believes in problems I can see. And now I can see it. I can see it every time I look into my wife's eyes. If you ever feel a silence that feels too deep, too heavy, walk away. Don't try to understand it. Don't listen. Because it might just be listening back.